God gave you the hardest test, and you passed with honor. There comes a moment in every soul's journey when the heavens seem silent, the ground beneath you trembles, and every comfort you once leaned on is stripped away. It is not a season of chance, nor is it cruelty, it is the appointed test. The sacred trial that measures the weight of your faith against the weight of your circumstances. You stood in that moment when everything in the visible world said, "Give up," yet something deeper within whispered, "Stand firm." You felt the fire lick at your edges, the winds threatened to tear you apart and the shadows close in, but you did not bow to fear. You chose to believe when there was nothing left to hold but belief itself. This is why you have emerged not merely as a survivor, but as one crowned with unseen honor, for the hardest test has passed before you, and you unshaken, unbroken, have passed it with a victory that all of heaven celebrates. The test was never to break you, but to reveal you. The hardest trials in your life were never meant to crush you, but to strip away everything that was false so that the truth of who you really are could stand in full light. When God allowed the winds to blow and the storms to rage, it was not because you were forgotten or forsaken, but because there was something in you that could only emerge under pressure. Diamonds are not formed in ease and comfort. They are born in the deepest places of the earth under unimaginable heat and pressure, and so it has been with you. The shaking, the breaking, the unanswered prayers, the silent nights, the friends who turned away, the doors that slammed shut, all of it was divinely designed to pull you away from what you thought you needed and anchor you in what you truly are. The test was not about whether you could endure pain. It was about whether you could remember your identity in the middle of it. You see, pain has a way of trying to define you, to make you believe you are less than you are, to convince you that your worth is measured by what you lose or what you suffer, but you passed because you refused to let pain dictate your identity. You stood in the fire and realized that you were not the flames, you were the gold being purified within them. And God was never absent in those moments, though it felt as if heaven had turned away. The teacher is always silent during the test, not because he has left, but because he is watching to see what you will do with what you have already been taught. This is why the very situations that looked like the end became the womb of your transformation. Every unanswered question, every tear that burned your cheeks, every moment when the enemy whispered you are done, these were the chisels shaping your destiny. You began to see that the breaking was not destruction, but construction, not the tearing down of your life, but the tearing down of illusions, fears, and false securities. And when everything you thought you needed was taken away, you discovered that the source of your strength was not in people, not in positions, not in possessions, but in the unshakable presence of God within you. The test revealed that you are more than your circumstances, that your spirit cannot be held captive by what happens outside of you. In passing it, you stepped into the rare company of those who have been refined in the furnace of affliction, and yet emerged not smelling of smoke. The world may never fully understand what you endured or how close you came to giving up, but heaven knows, and the honor you carry now is eternal. This is why you can stand tall today, not because you avoided pain, but because you walked through it and found yourself still standing, still believing, still holding on to the promise. The test did not come to break you. It came to reveal the strength, courage, the faith, and the resilience that God placed in you from the very beginning. And now you are living proof that what was meant to destroy you only uncovered the greatness you were always destined to carry. Inner vision triumphs over outer circumstances. The reason you passed the hardest test is because you learned the secret few ever discover, that the outer world, no matter how chaotic or threatening it may appear, has no real power over a soul that clings to the vision within. While others judge the storm by the size of the waves, you measured it by the size of your God. And that difference is what carried you through. You did not deny that the winds howled, that the waters rose, or that the night seemed endless, but you refused to give those things the final word. The circumstances tried to dictate the script of your life, to tell you that you were finished, forgotten, and left behind, but you chose instead to rehearse the truth God had planted in your spirit long before the trial began. That truth became your anchor, your compass, your guiding star in the midnight hour. Even when the outer evidence mocked your faith and whispered that nothing was changing, you kept seeing yourself on the other side of the valley. You imagined the day when the tears would be replaced by joy, when the burden would be lifted, when the light would break through. You understood that vision is not about seeing with the eyes, but with the heart, because eyes will always show you what is, but vision shows you what will be, and so you trained your mind to feed on the promise rather than the problem. You prayed as if the answer had already arrived, you gave thanks as if the victory was already won, and you walked as if the ground beneath you had already been made firm. Every voice that rose to question you only confirmed that you were on a path they could not yet see. The inner vision became so alive within you that it began to shape your outer reality, not overnight, but with steady, undeniable force. You began to notice small shifts, the way peace would settle on you in the middle of the storm, the way hope would spark again after a night of doubt, the way doors would start to open where once there had been only walls. This was not chance. This was the power of holding to the inner picture when the outer world screamed otherwise. You passed the test because you refused to surrender your vision to the visible. You knew that reality bends to the steadfast heart that will not release the image God has given it. The mountain may have loomed tall, but in your inner sight it was already moved. The prison may have looked unshakable, but in your spirit you were already free. That's why, even in the thick of it, you carried yourself as one who was headed toward victory, not because you could see the finish line with your eyes, but because you had already crossed it in your heart. This is the triumph that no outer force can steal. When what you see inside is more real to you than what surrounds you outside. And now, as the season shifts, others look at you and wonder how you did it, how you stood, how you believed, how you endured, but you know the truth. You simply chose to believe the inner vision over the outer evidence, and in doing so, you allowed the unseen to reshape the seen. Faith is proven in the dark, not the light anyone can believe when the sun is shining, when the path ahead is clear, when every prayer seems to be answered before it is even fully spoken. But faith is not measured in those moments. Faith is measured when the night is thick, when silence hangs heavy, when the promise seems buried beneath layers of impossibility. It is in the dark that the true weight of your trust is revealed, and this is where your victory was forged. The test you faced was not given to see if you could walk through a field of roses, but to see if you could walk through a valley of shadows without letting go of the hand of the one who called you. In the dark, there are no visible signs to encourage you, no cheering crowds to remind you to keep going. There is only you, the promise God whispered into your heart, and the choice to either hold it or release it. Many lose their grip here. They see nothing happening and assume nothing is happening. They feel no change and believe no change will come. But you understood that silence does not mean absence, that darkness does not mean defeat. You recognized that the seed must be buried in the earth, hidden away from sight, before it can push through the soil and reach the light. Your trial was the burial ground of your faith, and the darkness was simply the environment in which your roots grew deep. Every tear you cried watered that unseen seed. Every prayer you whispered in the stillness pressed it deeper into the soil of trust. And while your senses gave you no reason to believe, your spirit would not be moved. This is the faith that shakes the foundations of heaven, the kind that clings to the unseen when the sea offers no hope. You stood in that space where feelings failed you and chose to believe anyway. You walked when there was no visible path. You spoke life over situations that looked utterly lifeless. You declared victory while standing in the middle of what looked like defeat. This is not easy faith. This is refined faith, tested faith. Faith that has been tempered in the furnace until it shines like pure gold. And because you believed in the dark, your light now carries a depth and a power that cannot be counterfeited. Anyone can praise when the breakthrough comes, but the ones who praise before they see it, who rejoice while still in the fire, carry an authority that cannot be taken from them. You passed the hardest part of the test because you understood that the dark is not the end, it is the stage upon which the greatest acts of God are performed. The Red Sea did not part in broad daylight with fanfare before Israel stepped forward. It split when their backs were against the wall and all hope seemed lost. The stone was not rolled away from the tomb of Lazarus in the middle of a festival. It was rolled away in the quiet despair of mourning. And your story is the same. It was in the bleakest moment, when logic had run out and strength had run dry, that your faith stood tall and unshaken. That faith did not just carry you through, it changed you. It proved to heaven and to yourself that your trust was not conditional, not dependent on convenience, not based on visible blessings. It proved that your faith was anchored in who God is, not in what you could see Him doing in the moment. And now, because you have believed in the dark, you will carry that light into every season ahead, unafraid of the shadows, because you know that the one who kept you in the midnight hour will never fail you in the dawn. What you endured was not without cost. The trial left marks on you, and the journey carved its signature deep into your soul. But these are not the marks of defeat. They are the seals of honor, the visible and invisible proof that you faced the storm head on and emerged with your spirit intact. Every wound you carry tells a story of nights you thought would never end, of prayers that seemed to echo back in silence, of moments when the weight of life pressed so heavily on your chest you could barely breathe. And yet you did breathe. You inhaled the pain and exhaled the determination to take one more step. Each scar is a testimony not to the pain itself, but to the strength that rose in you to endure it. The world often teaches us to hide our wounds, to cover up our broken places as if they disqualify us from respect or worthiness, but in the kingdom of God, those very places are the evidence of your promotion. Just as soldiers wear their medals as proof of the battles they have survived and the courage they have displayed, so too do your wounds testify of the faith that refused to bow, the hope that would not let go, the love that remained even when you had every reason to close your heart. When you look back at the season you have just come through, you may still feel the tenderness of what happened, but you also feel something else, the weight of authority that now rests on you. For you did not just survive the trial, you were transformed by it. Pain is never wasted when it is placed in God's hands. He has taken the very things that tried to shatter you and turned them into the foundation of a deeper wisdom, a richer compassion, a sharper discernment. Now when you encounter others who are walking through the valleys you once knew, you do not speak to them from theory, you speak from experience. Your voice carries the resonance of one who has been there, who has wept those tears, who has wrestled with those doubts, and who has emerged stronger. And when they see your scars, they do not see weakness, they see proof that it is possible to come out on the other side. This is the honor you carry now, the honor of authenticity, of resilience, of faith that has been tested and proven. Even the enemy must acknowledge that you cannot be shaken the way you once could, for you have already faced what was meant to break you, and you are still standing. In fact, you are not just standing, you are standing taller, rooted deeper, shining brighter. And while the wounds may have been painful to receive, they have now become badges that set you apart. They tell the world and the unseen realm that you are a warrior who has been tried in battle and found worthy of trust. God himself takes pride in presenting you as one who has endured the refining process and emerged as pure gold. Every scar, every healed fracture in your heart, every memory of pain transformed into wisdom, these are not reminders of loss but confirmations of victory. You carry them not as burdens but as banners, proclaiming to everyone who sees you that it is possible to walk through the fire and come out without being consumed. And because of these seals of honor, you are now positioned for assignments and blessings that could only be entrusted to someone who has proven their endurance. You are no longer who you were before the trial began. You have been forged into someone who can be trusted with more, because you have shown that nothing, not loss, not pain, not betrayal can strip away your integrity or your faith. Every wound you carry is heaven's declaration that you have overcome. Passing the test unlocks the next assignment. When God allows you to face the hardest test of your life, it is never without purpose, and it is never without promotion, in the same way that soldier is not sent to the front lines without proving their skill in training. You were not given your next assignment without first showing that you could be trusted in the fire. Passing the test was not simply about surviving. It was about demonstrating to heaven, to yourself, and even to the watching world that you would not abandon your faith, your integrity, or your calling no matter how fierce the pressure became. You did not compromise in the heat of the trial, and because of that you are now qualified to carry more. The next chapter of your life is not random, it is directly connected to the character, strength, and vision that were forged in you during the trial. You have been entrusted with greater influence, deeper revelation, and higher responsibility because you proved that you would not mishandle what God placed in your hands. The test revealed not only your endurance but your readiness. You learned to listen for God's whisper in the chaos, to act in obedience when it cost you something, to hold on to promises when there was no evidence they would be fulfilled. These skills, this spiritual maturity, is the foundation upon which your new assignment will be built. And understand this: the next assignment is not necessarily easier, it is greater. greater in impact, greater in reach, greater in eternal value. You are being positioned to influence lives, to break chains, to speak life into places that are suffocating under darkness, and you could not have carried this mantle before you passed the test. There is a reason the enemy fought so hard to break you in the last season. He saw what you would step into if you survived. But you did more than survive, you triumphed. And now, doors that were once closed will swing open because your spirit carries the weight of one who can be trusted. You are stepping into circles you once only dreamed of, opportunities you once thought were beyond your reach, divine connections that will accelerate your purpose. But this is not about personal elevation. It is about divine assignment. The very valleys you walked through have become the training grounds for the mountains you will now climb. The compassion you developed through your pain will now become a healing river to others. The discernment you sharpened in the dark will now guide you in navigating the complexities of this new season. Passing the test was the unlocking moment, the key turning in the lock of your destiny, and once a door like this opens, no man, no demon, no circumstance can shut it. The Lord himself has signed your promotion with the ink of your perseverance. You have proven that you are not driven by applause, that you are not swayed by public opinion, that you will hold to truth even when it costs you comfort. That is why you are about to be entrusted with more, because God knows you will not drop what he gives you. You will not misuse what he places in your care, and you will not forget the one who brought you here. The hardest test was your preparation for the highest trust, and now, as you step forward, you do so not as the person who entered that trial, but as the one who came out of it refined, equipped, and ready. Your next assignment has already been set in motion, and everything you endured was the shaping process for this exact moment. The season ahead will demand the very strength, wisdom, and unshakable faith you now carry. You have passed with honor, and now heaven hands you the pen to write the next chapter.